Good evening. Tuesday nights we talk business and finance with our live studio panel. And joining me this evening, Chris Pichon makes a welcome return to our panel. Chris is from Hertfordshire. He has run his own successful business, of course, and he's now the chairman of the Winter Business Group. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you. Yes,
nice
it's been a while. Thank you.
Frances Pardell is former senior BBC press officer. Frances now runs her own public relations company based in Luton, and she has some very high-profile clients. Welcome back to you.
Thank you.
And Richard Bunn is the man who runs White Hot Vans. They say you can gauge the British economy by the number of commercial vehicles that are sold or leased. That's what Richard's business does. He can supply any kind of van.
Indeed.
Even with big sparkly wheels. Literally anything you want.
Yes.
Fantastic. This is a good panel tonight. Chris Pichon, Frances Pardell, Richard Bunn. You can text us 81333. Start your text 3CR.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Roberto Perrone
on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Panel, good evening. Shall we kick off with interest rates? The outgoing Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, Sir Charlie Bean, has given the strongest hint yet that we should expect a base rate of 5% within the next 5 years. Have a listen to what he had to say.
I wouldn't want to say it'll be back there in 10 years, but I think it's plausible over the sort of very long run, if you want to call it that these headwinds will abate. I think it might well be reasonable to think in that very long term you would go back to 5%, but it's probably quite a long way down the road.
So 5% base rate. Is that too high, Chris?
It is at the moment, that's for sure. I should think it will terrify people with with mortgages that are tight. But I think if you go back to pre-2008, 2007, 5% was fairly average going, so people were used to it then. We're not used to it now, and what he's doing is sowing the seed to get us starting to think about getting back there. I think he's right, he's hedging himself, he's putting it back a long time, and whether it's 5 years or 8 years or what, I don't know. But
I think it's a generational thing, because we've had these fixed, very low rates for a number of years now. People don't forget, I remember when it was a lot higher than that.
Yeah, I do too.
Was it 16, 17, 18%? So at 5%, you're still thinking that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's true. And
as a base rate, though.
As a base rate, and that's the point, base rate, and then what are they borrowing at? What are they lending at? Are you pushing it up to sort of 7-8% interest rates? Ooh, that's a bit heavy at the moment, isn't it? I don't think any government would want that on their patch at the moment. But I think what he's doing is sowing the seeds to start the ball rolling, and it's already done. And I expect probably the interest rates will start to move maybe before. I don't know whether before the election, but certainly straight afterwards.
Frances Pardell, 5% base rate.
I think that going from, I think it's 0.5 at the moment, up to 5% in 5 years, just sounds way too high. Families are already struggling to keep up, wages aren't going up. And I do wonder why Sir Charlie decided to make this announcement as the outgoing Deputy Governor, because I really trust Mark Carney, who is the Governor of the Bank of England, and I just think it's a bit out of order for Sir Charlie to make these kind of pronouncements. Really? Yeah, I do. I think that I would leave it to Mark Carney.
Doesn't it surprise you?
I trust Mark Carney.
Do you? Why?
Because he seems to know what he's doing.
Trust the Governor of the Bank of England?
Well, why not?
If you can't trust him, who can you trust?
He seems to be holding the ship fairly steady. So Sir Charlie, don't trust you.
But 0.5%, it just cannot stay.
No, obviously it's got to go up, but to go up that much within 5 years.
Not straight away, but it's gradually.
Over 5 years sounds really high. We shall see.
Richard?
He's actually fairly non-committal on it. He says could be 10 years, could be longer. I'm not going to commit in the medium term. So he's not actually saying a lot. But 5% is not great, but it's the transition period that's the important bit. If it's staggered over a long period, we'll get used to it. The discussion of it, as Francis said, the fact that he's mentioned it might affect confidence. That's the worrying thing, is once people start to talk about interest rates going up, even if they don't, then it does hit confidence, which is not what we need at the moment, to be honest.
Does it affect your business, what interest rates?
Hugely, because I would say 90% of our vehicles are financed, so the interest rate determines the payment. Most people don't buy vans outright, so it's hugely important, yeah.
But, when it comes to commercial, all kinds of vehicles, you can get better rates on cars and vans than you can from building societies for buildings, for example, or a house.
Yeah, often manufacturers will actually subvent rates to make them cheap on new vehicles. So you can often get a rate there cheaper than you get a mortgage rate, or a lot of even 0% stuff. But a decent business rate, 4% these days, is probably a borrowing rate for a
because
business.
with vehicles, unless they make them, they've got to shift them.
Yeah, exactly. So there's incentives to take things on finance.
8 minutes past 6 o'clock. You want to join in the conversation? 08459 455 555. Panel, has the argument against keeping Sunday special finally been laid to rest? Parcel Force became the UK's first parcels carrier to deliver on Sundays. The unions say shifts are on a voluntary basis, so no one is having to work on a Sunday, only those people that want to work for Parcel Force on the Sunday. Is this going to become the norm, Francis?
Well, my reaction to this is hurrah for common sense. If there's a market for it, supply it and get well paid for doing it. It just sounds like sound business sense to me. I mean, supermarkets are open now, shops are open now on Sunday, so why not have deliveries? And I hope that the unions are for it, because I wish more union leaders had business training so that they'd understand how businesses need to be run and that they are commercial enterprises.
This idea of keeping something special, do we just lay that to rest completely?
But it's not special, is it? I mean, okay, you can still go to church, but shops are open most of the day. I mean,
do you work on a Sunday?
Sometimes.
Does it worry you at all, or do you not have a...
No, because it's my business, so I don't mind. I don't find it a problem. But I mean, I love shopping on Sunday. I love going up to Milton Keynes for a nice bit of retail therapy.
Chris Pichon,
I wrote down here that Sunday's the busiest day on supermarkets, from what I can see from the traffic around Apsley and Hemel and what have you, and in Watford. And I am of the older generation, and I remember what Sundays used to be like. And what they're like today is no comparison. But, Francis is right. Time's moved on. I suspect that once Parcel Force are doing it, they'll all do it.
So you'd expect deliveries. If you order something, you'd expect to deliver on a Sunday.
Well, people are ordering online on a Sunday. Why shouldn't they deliver it? It made no sense not to.
I've always been a fan of keeping Sunday special, but of course with things like deliveries, Saturdays and Sundays are traditionally when people are at home.
I agree.
Because normally you're not there when they deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the problem? Well done Parcel Force for doing it, trying it out. As I said, I suspect in a very, very short time you'll find they're all doing it.
Mm. Long are the days when you can take a drive out on a Sunday morning and the roads are quiet. It's going to be packed full of vans and lorries delivering. Richard Bunn.
Well, good for us if they need more vans, but I'm a bit old school. I mean, last year my wife and I, we went to live in France for a month, and in France, Saturday they see friends, Sunday they see family, they don't do any work.
And look at the state of their economy.
Exactly. But it's good fun, and I think sometimes I think, seeing family at the weekends, doing all that stuff has got to be better than going to home base. Just go to home base on a different day. I'm sure it's great for the economy, but part of me, it's too late now. The horse has bolted in England. We already do that, but I sometimes look at the European countries and think they've got something a bit right in terms of the family at the weekend.
Does this then become a conversation about the fact that we perhaps work too hard? We tend to work to survive. I mean, across a lot of European countries, for example, and South American countries, they work to live. I mean, they work, but they enjoy themselves. They have a life outside of work, whereas people in this, still in Britain, we just seem to work and try and need to do more work.
Yeah, and they don't. Overseas, they do take a bit more time out. I mean, when we were over there, there's a guy from the equivalent of British Gas having a half carafe of red wine and a lamb chop at lunchtime, and then he's off to work again. I'm not saying we should do that, but they do know how to enjoy themselves. It might not be great for productivity, but there's something I hark back a little bit to think we should be having a bit of a better work-life balance, I think.
I've just got back from Spain, and they have endless public holidays. Each of the local areas have their own celebrations. Fireworks going off at all odd times and what have you. And in Spain, obviously, they start work later, they take longer breaks, they work a bit later in the evening, but that's the climate. But I agree, I think it is a bit of a shame, but that's the way it is.
Could they cope with our work ethic here? Because people here have to work really hard.
Well, it's a bit of a treadmill, though, isn't it?
And also, they don't have to work at weekends. I mean, people actually use shopping as a kind of entertainment and relaxation.
Do you
It's
get
choice.
Do you get that retail therapy, Chris? Do you?
I don't have to do that anymore. No.
Do you not get the thrill like Francis?
No, I
makes
don't.
shopping?
You talk to my wife. I hate shopping. I'm one of those guys that goes in,
It's
knows
three
what I
against
want.
one in here. That's not fair.
I go in and buy what I want, and I clear off as quickly
What
as
about
possible.
perusing all the shops and see what
no,
the first thing you
not
see perhaps
interested.
not the best thing?
I know what I want, and I know what I want.
But maybe what you want isn't the right thing for you. Maybe
But then I don't get it.
they can offer you something better.
Who cares? Life's too short.
Richard, do you enjoy a bit of retail therapy?
I don't mind shopping actually. No, at the weekend I don't like busy shops, so I would never go to Tesco on a Saturday. I would just go on the way home from work or something like that. I hate the thrall of the masses in shops, but perhaps that's why we've got so much retail debt, because everyone's shopping all the time rather than swimming or having barbecues maybe. Perhaps that's the answer.
We spoke earlier on this afternoon to Anne Scott, who's the managing director of a local company in Chesham, Auberge de Chocolat. They were affected by the floods and the bad weather earlier this year, and they really affected their business. And I just, as a supplementary question, Phil, do most businesses understand that something might go wrong with where they work? I mean, your office might get flooded, it might get burnt down, and maybe we don't have contingency plans in place, Chris.
Well, that's true. I think we're all optimists. We all think it'll happen to the person next door or round the corner, but never to us. And fires happen regularly. Talk to the fire brigade. Floods do. Bad weather. And then the occasional thing like that blast in Hemel a few years ago. So yeah, I mean, the trouble is you can spend an awful lot of time on these plans, and I've done one or two in my time. And then they go in the drawer, and because 99 times they're never used.
Richard, do you have a contingency plan in case something happens?
Yeah, for us, because we're not manufacturing and we don't have vehicles on site, everything is in the cloud, so we could literally pick up and I could be in the door doing tomorrow selling vans, to be fair. But we've had to, to be honest, 2 years ago I would have been in a right state if something happened with the business. It's just after a certain point, when you're a small business, you have to think of business recovery. It's almost imprudent to not do so, but in the early days, no.
And Francis, I mean, do you back up your client details because with you it's all about contacts, of course?
Yes, I do, and I back up my hard drive as well. And I don't have a contingency plan as such, but then I heard your piece with Anne Scott, and I think given the business that she runs, it probably would have been, I know it's retrospective, but it probably would have been a good idea to make sure that it was all safe and that they could continue should the weather get really bad.
Okay. We'll take some turns to come back with our panel: Chris Pichon, Francis Pardell and Richard Bunn.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Delays at Stevenage, Hitchin Road, the A602 northbound is partly blocked at the moment. There's a bus broken down there between Ingleside Drive at the Lister Hospital roundabout and the exit for the A1M at Junction 8. It's close to the Corries Mill roundabout as well. That's causing lots of queues. The A1M itself nearby also really slow at the moment. The northbound side queuing from just after Hatfield, passing Welling, up past Nebworth now towards the exit for the A602. So do expect around 20 minutes of delays there heading northbound on the A1M. M25 still looking a bit slow on the clockwise side, queuing from just after Potters Bar, Junction 24, and then stop-start really all the way along to the exit for Enfield and the A10 at Junction 25. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
The next travel bulletin is in 15 minutes.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Mornings. They always seem to end up being a bit... So why not let Ian Lee take the stress out of it for you? Telling you what's happening where you live.
Living at Milton Keynes Hospital, the captain of a cricket club that plays in Houghton Regis.
What the best way to get to work is.
In 200 yards, turn left, and it's a clear run all the way.
Everything you need to get the best start to the day.
And maybe, just maybe, make your mornings a little bit more...
Ian Lee, weekday mornings from 6 on BBC Three Counties Radio. The Business and Finance Hour with Roberto Perrone.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Welcome back to my panel. Francis Pardell, PR, she runs a PR company based in Luton. Richard Bunn runs White Hot Vans. They sell, lease and do stuff with vans. And Chris Pichon, who's now the chairman of the Wenter Business Group. Well, being chairman of the Wenter Business Group, There's a change, of course. It's a different role to what you were used to before. What does being chairman mean?
Good question. I'm slowly finding out. I'm now running sort of the board mainly, and on the main board, and we're looking at obviously the strategic direction of the company, where we're going in the longer term, and also looking at the financial structure and making sure that decisions that we're taking are sound and on that side of things. And we're not so involved. I'm not so involved in the operational decisions of worrying where the next contract's coming, or what the next school program's going to be. So my role has changed from being one of running all the day-to-day stuff and making sure the business is delivering all the things it said it was going to do in the budget, to now looking at the longer-term strategy of the business.
Do you still have a parking space with your name on it?
I never had one. Never. I never wanted one.
I've always wanted one of those.
No. It was always, if you've been down to Watford or some of our other sites, parking is the biggest issue. And the worst thing you can do is to stick your name on a badge that says that's your space. Because immediately people ask, well, why has he got one and why can't I have one? Oh no, parking. Any person who runs a centre like that will tell you that parking issues are, especially these days. You're going to talk about parking where you're going to.
If I have to, yeah. Francis Puddell, what's the best thing about your job?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I still get really excited about press cuttings. And when I was at the BBC, it was all about national newspapers, and I get just as excited getting one of my clients in a regional newspaper. It doesn't matter where. It's just the thrill of knowing that it's a success. So, because, this sounds so cheesy, but truly my success is other people's success.
Richard, you must have your own parking space with your name on it saying, I am the boss.
I actually put a sign up saying no. Actually, Francis will know exactly where we are because she used to work up there. I put a no parking sign outside the office and somebody unscrewed it in the night and put it in the bin.
Ooh, that's cheeky.
I never found out who.
Do you think they're trying to tell you something?
I think so. Yeah.
So that's got to be the ultimate, isn't it? If you drive up somewhere and you've got your own parking space with your name on it.
Why is that so important to you?
I just think it's a sign of power.
One day,
I'm getting
sticky
the thumbs
bun
up
on the wall.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't want I don't need a computer. I just want my own parking space with your name on it.
Why don't
reserved.
you do it at home?
Do it at home, that's it.
Yeah, I do at home, yeah.
For your next birthday present.
Panel, is British beef safe for the Americans to eat? The Environment Secretary, Owen Paterson, is in the States trying to persuade meat buyers in the USA that after an 8-year ban following our mad cow epidemic in 2006, it doesn't seem like 8 years, but it is. It is now time to allow imports. The market is worth an estimated £60 million to British producers. Should we try and be more persuasive with the Americans, Richard?
Yes. I think this is good old-fashioned government trade delegation stuff, which is what they should be doing, working on behalf of businesses to sort things out that have probably gone on a little bit too long. So I think this includes Scottish haggis.
Well, this is because they've got their own beef and pork. What they haven't got, of course, is haggis. But should we eat more haggis?
Well, they don't like sheep lung in the US, do they? So that's why they don't like haggis.
Yeah, you tend not to think about sheep lung.
Yeah.
But it is, haggis, a nice bit of haggis with the neeps and a nice glass of whiskey, a dram of whiskey. It's an acquired taste.
But it smacks a little bit of protectionism from the US. It's an excuse, and I think it's probably time now to discuss it and get it sorted out, I would say.
Francis?
I completely agree with Richard. It does sound like it is protectionism. And I just think, of course, they should accept our beef. Now it's all safe. And I think if they say no, then we should ensure that their importers to the UK suffer similar consequences. So I think like for like.
With the Americans?
Yeah, if you won't take our beef, we won't take your whatever.
Hamburgers.
McDonald's, yeah.
Oh, yes, please.
So where?
I can't see that working.
No.
So where do McDonald's and Burger King buy them?
But they'll be UK subsidiaries. They wouldn't be, and most of them are franchise anyway. So it wouldn't be.
Well, we're part of the European Union, and I'm surprised that they're not lobbying. And if we're selling into Europe, we should be selling into.
I'm surprised it was 8 years. It doesn't seem like 8 years. There's been a story today in the Sun. 60 MPs are backing calls to slash VAT on days out in Britain. Even Brussels said it wouldn't have a problem with the change. The European Commission told the Sun it was up to the Chancellor if he wanted to cut VAT on hotels from 20% to as low as 5%. This story comes back to the VAT rate, 20%. Is it too high, Richard?
I think it is. Well, it was 15, 17 and a half. It makes a huge difference with us. Obviously, there's VAT on vans. If you're not everybody's VAT registered. If you're a painter and decorator, you're unlikely to be VAT registered, and yet you've still got to pay VAT on the van, and you can't claim it back. So it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
And 15%, a reduction of 5%, would that help, for example, in your industry?
I think it would help all industries. I think they did it for a reason, was it 5 or 6 years ago, and it's never gone back, and it's probably time to have a look at it. I'm not sure that the Sun's 5%, that's just a red top headline, but to do something sensible, I think 15% or even a tweak to 17.5 would make a difference, because it is actually real cash flow that's affecting people.
But it's an easy tax for the government to collect, of course, VAT, you collect it for them.
Well, it's a lazy tax, and it polices itself, because everybody does it anyway. You can't. There's nothing you can do differently apart from run the same invoice system for everything. So it's a very easy tax to collect.
Francis?
I think it's a great idea. I again agree with Richard. I think VAT at 20% on everything is horrendous. It's way too high, and in fact, you'd get consumers spending more if VAT was lower, and the revenue would be just the same, and I think the economy would be better from a reduction in VAT.
But this is that whole discussion that if you have lower tax, if you have a lower band of taxation, then you actually, as a revenue, the government will collect more money. They never seem to. The mathematicians always say that's how it works. Any government never wants to accept that. They just like to stick with the higher rate.
They've got the courage to do it. That's why.
Chris?
Well, the first thing they did, it was one of the first taxes to be increased, when the new coalition government came in. I suspect also that there's a lot of internal opposition. I think when you get these changes announced, the biggest hurdle that they probably have to overcome is within the Inland Revenue itself, because it means they've got to work differently and set different rates and different returns, and life is not so easy. So I would suspect that the biggest opposition they'll get is from the Inland Revenue themselves.
It's coming up to 25 minutes past 6. Marion says, Rob, I believe Parcel Force, she's on the text, I believe Parcel Force are delivering on Sunday because the other companies already are. Also, it's only in London at the moment. I like shopping on Sundays because it's only 11 till 5 or 10 till 4. It isn't like the rest of the week, 24 hours. Much more leisurely. Thank you, Marion. I'm not sure if shopping on Sunday is more leisurely. When I've tried, if for some reason we've forgotten to go shopping, and I go shopping to a supermarket on a Sunday, it's chaotic. It's actually easy to go during the week. I mean, it's on the way home, or it's a lot quieter. And also, I've discussed this so many times. I don't know if this bothers you. It's now all the self-service tills they've introduced.
Oh, I hate those.
Nightmare.
The supermarket near me, they've got like 20 tills, but there's only ever 2 or 3 open, and the rest, and it's like, there's chaos, and they never, unless it's me who can't, they never scan properly.
No,
There's always
the things.
No, they're the bane of everybody's life.
Yeah. Well, you ever found yourself, it's not scanning, and the guy comes along.
Use them. I feel like they're taking the mickey by making me serve myself. So I'd rather stand in the queue and get somebody else to do it.
It's that moment where you try and scan something, and the barcode that they've printed off, for example, is too faint, and you've left your glasses at home, and you try to read the numbers, and you think, oh my.
Well, that thing when they say item in the bagging area or something.
And it's not.
You just want to punch the machine.
Yeah.
Well, I do. Anyway.
Everyone's looking at you while the machine's talking to you.
It's 26 minutes past 6 o'clock. How's business at the moment, Richard?
Great now, although, funnily enough, the World Cup is not great for business. So it actually, as soon as England got knocked out, the phone started ringing again during the period when England were actually
5 days?
False hopes. Yeah, luckily it wasn't very long. But it's not, football tournaments are not great for business because people just stop doing things. They just don't make decisions. I'm not saying they're all in the pub all the time, but it's just that the country seems to go.
Well, it's a big event. It's a huge event, of course. And, I wouldn't have expected your business to suffer from the world. I mean, I know it's had a tremendous impact on business around the country, of course.
Well, vans are all about a decision-making process. It's the second biggest decision after buying a house. So if you've got other things on your mind, they tend to put it off. And so now it's really strange. But first 3 weeks of May was really quiet. Lots of inquiries, no decisions. So the phone still rings. They just don't actually make their mind up. And then now people are starting to make their mind up again, making the purchases.
And the average cost of a van, I mean, the latest Ford Transit, I mean, is there such a thing as an average?
From us, list price is about 21. From us, it's about 14.
So that's a big saving.
Yeah. Fleet discounts, Roberto.
Does that apply to cars as well?
We do cars. I mean, this week we've done an Audi A3, we've done a Volkswagen Beetle for my next door neighbour, convertible. So we do cars. We've got 2 sites, White Hot Cars and White Hot Vans.
If you carry on, I think you're about to make a sale.
No, I can't afford. I haven't got no money, so I can't. So you do cars as well?
We do. Yes, brand new cars.
And is that a new thing for you, or?
No, we've always done it. It's just that vans is during the recession. Vans was the bit that was growing because the trade guys, everyone was doing their houses up rather than selling their houses. So they were actually a growth market at the time. So we took a sort of strategic decision to head for vans rather than cars.
So what's the nicest car you've sold?
Oh, we did a lovely S5 to somebody for their daughter for Christmas and they wanted a bow around it on Christmas Eve.
S5, that's a
Audi
S5.
Somebody in Harpenden, funnily enough.
Yeah, and you put a bow on the car.
Yeah. We do anything.
It's business.
Exactly.
You put a candle on it as well.
No, it's not safe. Might have a thermal event, as they say in the automotive industry.
What
bow
nice
on a
parents.
car.
Would they like to adopt me? I don't
It's
know.
Harpenden.
I'm trying with them.
I mean, seriously, who's surprised?
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Quite a queue on the A1M northbound. The queue starts around junction 5 for Welling and then slow all the way up past Nebworth towards Stevenage. Not helped by a problem on Hitchin Road at Stevenage, the A60 to the northbound side. They're still partly blocked by a bus which is broken down. It's between the Lister Hospital roundabout and the A1M at junction 8, close to the Corries Mill roundabout. So that's causing loads of queues as well back along Hitchin Road. M25 queuing clockwise approaching the A10 at junction 25, very slow there. Anti-clockwise also queuing there, as is the A10 itself, southbound from Broxbourne. So it looks like something's going on, possibly at the roundabout for the M25 and the A1M. So do expect the A10 rather. So do expect delays there. Southbound very slow from Broxbourne. Delays of 20 minutes now, heading down towards the M25. That's also affecting if you're heading up from Enfield towards the motorway. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thank you. More from Adam in the next 15 minutes.
Across beds, hearts and bugs.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
6:30 with the latest news headlines. Here's Tara Gungerful.
Health officials have announced that a third baby, which had been given a contaminated nutritional supplement while in hospital, has died after being treated at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridgeshire. Public Health England and the medicines watchdog, the MHRA, say the number of possible and confirmed cases they're investigating has risen to 23, including 2 at Luton and Dunstable Hospital and 1 at Stoke Mandeville Hospital near Aylesbury. A teenage girl has been taken to hospital with burns to her face following a science experiment at a St Albans school today. The Year 12 student at Sandringham School suffered serious burns to her eyes and skin after chemicals exploded in her face. The condition isn't thought to be life-threatening. A law firm representing many victims of Jimmy Savile has been contacted by up to a dozen people who've made fresh complaints about Rolf Harris. He was convicted yesterday of indecently assaulting 4 young girls and women. And police in Portugal have questioned 3 people about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The 3-year-old girl vanished in the resort of Praia da Luz in 2007. A 4th person has still to be questioned by detectives. In sport at the World Cup, it's currently 0-0 between Argentina and Switzerland midway through the second half as they compete for a quarter-final place. Tonight the USA face Belgium. And most places tonight will have a dry night with long clear periods. The minimum temperature overnight will be 9 degrees Celsius, that's 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Get the latest news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3 counties.
Tara, thank you. Is that my dog snoring on your lap?
Yeah, it's not me.
Thank you, Tara.
On FM, AM, online and digital radio.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Tonight's panel, Francis Pardell, Richard Bunn and Chris Pichon. Panel, is flexible working good for business? Every employee in the UK who's worked for more than 6 months has the right to request flexible working hours under a new law that came into force yesterday. Until now, only parents and carers have been eligible, but it's been extended to include 20 million workers. John Silvera is the founder of Fuse Technologies, a video computing company in Underwood in 3 Counties, which employs 11 people. He does offer flexible working, but appreciates that it's not going to be welcomed by every business. His employees, though, they do appreciate it.
I have people working for me now that have worked with me or worked with or for me for 20 years. And particularly I could highlight a couple that would say it is because of that reason. This is a terrible thing to say, but, you know, if you are that flexible with your employees, to put this very carefully, but if you are that flexible, it's considered another form of payment in a way. It's almost as good as a pay rise, to have that flexibility and that lifestyle.
Chris Pichon, what do you make of this?
Oh, he's right. I think there's been a massive change in the way people work these days. I think flexible working has been coming in more and more. I think that the workforce these days, there's a lot of flexibility in it. I think the thing to remember though is that the request doesn't mean right to work. It doesn't give you the right. It only gives you the right to request it. But what it makes it do, it makes the employer think, and that John has said that it's made a change for his business. And I think people, as there are more and more small businesses, if you've got somebody who is really valuable in the business and you want to keep them, but they only want to work 4 days a week, or they want to finish at 3 o'clock on a Friday, or they want to work from home 2 days a week, or however you want to do it, it's possible, it's doable, and there's less and less argument. If you're running, an organisation that has to run to a timetable and things are really difficult, governed by times and what have you, that make it impossible, then you can request, but it may not be agreed. But
I don't think my boss would be too happy if I tell us, look,
you request it.
I fancy working on a Monday and a Tuesday. Wednesday I'd only like to do an hour, and Thursday and Friday, in some cases, it's just not the case. Francis?
I think this is about time. One of my clients has been doing flexible working since the 90s. I think it's a way of treating your employees like grown-ups and not like sort of 18th century serfs, basically. And also, when I now own my own business, when I was an employee, it was always the people with kids who got sort of first dibs on summer holidays, and they always had Christmas and New Year period off because of their families. And so I used to tend to work because I didn't have children. So I think that it's fair. And of course, if it's detrimental to the business, such as you need to come in every day because that's your job. Sorry about that, but it's true.
I'd rather do this than not work.
But I think, and also I think, as Chris has said, or as this, what was the man who said it? John
Silvera.
It's a really grown-up way to treat your staff. It gives them more responsibility, and I think job satisfaction probably soars when people know that they are trusted to work from home and that they will get the job done. So, good thing.
Richard?
It does all depend on the business. Obviously, it won't work for all businesses. With us, we've got 4 women who are all on flexible working, and they've all got children.
And all your employees love you?
Well, that's what they say. But I don't know. But they've all got children. One's a single parent, and this week, Paula, who, to be fair, does push it because she goes to ballet fusion lessons and all sorts. But her daughter had to go. She was not very well. But Paula had to take her daughter to the orthodontist. They just fit around. But then when I'm on holiday, they're actually working out between them how they can do the child cover while I'm away. So you do get.
But that's because you obviously have a relationship with your workers, and they realise the work has to be done. Yeah. The problem comes, of course, when people start taking the biscuit and saying, and just coming, and being a bit too presumptuous with the amount of flexible working.
Well, that's the funny thing. I think in some of the papers that I've read, it says it doesn't work for small businesses, but actually it works really well for small businesses if you're quite a tight-knit team, because people understand that if the business doesn't succeed, then they're not going to be working there in the end. But I think as you go up into larger businesses, it becomes more and more difficult.
I think there can be more issues around job share than there can be around flexible working. So, it swings and roundabouts really as to how you can work it. But in a small business where you need flexibility, it works.
As with everything, if you get the right people.
And the right people, it will work.
Do you enjoy working, Chris?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed working. I'm working less these days, but I still enjoy it.
And do you miss working? I mean,
do I miss going...
Do you miss not working on a day-to-day basis?
No, I don't. I think I'm doing something different now, which I've never done in my life. I've never had this amount of time off where I can decide to do other things, and therefore, this is something new to me. I've always worked quite long hours, and now I'm doing other things. It's great.
Francis, do you enjoy working with your own company? People who run their own business tend to work a lot.
I do, but for the first time in my life, I've definitely got the work-life balance. So I do a lot of things outside work. I've got a lot of interests outside. I see friends. I do all
Shop.
sorts of things. Yes, well, I'm a woman. I do shop. But I do other things apart from shop. Thank you very much. But yes, I love what I do. I think, particularly in the line of business I'm in, if you don't love it, you wouldn't be able to do it.
No, it's not. I mean, I think in any business, if you don't enjoy it, you wouldn't be able to do it.
But
Isn't that right?
it can be a real slog sometimes.
Which is that the case? I mean, you must love what you do, otherwise.
Yeah, I love working. If I sold the business for a fortune, I'd end up starting something else. But I'd like to work less, but I'm not at that stage yet. I work too many hours, but I'd like to work less hours, but I'd never not work.
Yeah, two of my panellists have certainly last year sold their businesses and both of them for very large amounts of money, and both after a couple of months of mucking about on boats or whatever, have started up new businesses because they just got. Well, as one gentleman told me, he just got fed up on his boat. He just only so many days you can spend drinking white wine on the back of a boat. Lovely as it is, you get bored.
Yeah, I agree. When I sold my business, years ago, I thought I'd have 3 months off and just do nothing. Within less than a month, I was back looking and starting again and itching to get on with something else. Yeah. If you're a busy person and like doing things, then that's the way it is.
I go 6 months, I think.
Yeah, you say that. 21 minutes to 7 o'clock. How much social pressure are big companies under to pay what is deemed as a fair level of tax? And this past weekend, campaigners from a UK pressure group called UK Uncut targeted quite a large number of Boots stores and are promising to target more. Now, they allege that Boots has avoided £1.2 billion in UK corporation tax. Boots deny all the allegations and have responded by saying the claims are based on the assumption that any company carrying corporate debt is practicing tax avoidance. Now, I don't want to discuss what Boots may or may not be doing. We simply don't know that, of course. But how careful do big companies, big corporations have to be to appear to be fair on tax and their social responsibility, Francis? At the end, it comes down to a PR question, doesn't it?
But apparently they don't have to be careful at all. Look at Amazon, look at Costa, look at all of those companies, Google, who make billions in this country and end up paying tax or no tax in Luxembourg. The thing that really gets me about this, and this is not to do with Boots, is that HMRC positively bully smaller companies if they think they're not paying enough tax, because they go after the easy meat, the little people, whereas there should be radical changes to go after the big companies like the Amazons and whoever. From a PR perspective, it doesn't seem to have made any difference. People are still shopping on Amazon. People can continue to shop at Boots. Cafe Costa is still really busy. So I think that it needs some really big change.
I think Costa do pay corporation tax. I think it's Starbucks who are the big question.
Oh, okay.
And I think,
Costa.
No, and I think. Because I think there has been a change. I mean, obviously the numbers they deal with are so vast that they might lose a percentage of business, but
they gave some. I mean, if it was Starbucks, they gave like 20 million as a token gesture, but it was peanuts compared to how much profit they make in this country, and still managed to get away with it.
Chris, I mean, do these big companies, do they have to be careful of what they do? Because we don't know what happened at Boots. They know the allegations. But, of course, if you have people turning up, protest groups turning up at your businesses on a Saturday protesting, it gathers momentum quite quickly.
It does. But these things do have a habit of coming and going, petering out. And I think they work on that. But I think also, I mean, Francis is right. If anything really upsets most honest taxpayers, it's that more than, the little guy that's getting away with not, with the small amounts on his tax return. And I think you're absolutely right. I think this is government policy, and this is inland revenue policy, and I think this is about, government set the rules. So Boots are probably saying they're just sticking to the rules. They're not breaking them, they're just following the rules.
And do you think there is undue pressure placed on the smaller business, the individual running his own company, for example?
Unquestionably. There's enormous pressure brought on them from every angle. Whether it's VAT returns, whether it's putting government survey returns through, whether it's filling in your P11Ds, and all these things that government.
How do you explain the kind of pressure? You place a small business, for example, for an extra few £1,000s, okay, and they will rack up accountants' fees, which are horrendous as well. when they could be going after someone who's avoiding 20 million or 50 million in tax?
I think that's what we're saying. I think that there's a different level of priority, and I think the fact is that the inland revenue seem to have been lazy when it comes to dealing with corporates, and they're more inclined to do a deal that makes life easy than it is to actually get in there and sort out. But it's the rules, and corporates employ lawyers and the tax lawyers and all kinds of people to make sure they minimise their tax, and they're entitled to do that.
Richard Bunn.
I think they do have a social responsibility to be seen to be doing something, because these days you can't ignore stuff like this because word travels like wildfire. This is to do with leveraging businesses by private equity. So they've borrowed so much against the business, and I think they've located in Switzerland, so they pay 3% tax. So that stuff goes on all the time. Boots would be very brave to ignore it, I would say, but it's just so difficult to enforce because it is easy to go after small businesses. We get ourselves in knots doing PAYE monthly rather than quarterly now, and it changes all the time. It's really difficult to do. And then if you look at the cases where they've gone after big business, like the Shenguis brothers when they tried to do an investigation with them, and it cost them millions, and then they lost. So it's actually easier to go after the small and medium-sized businesses. I can see why they do it. Boots aren't breaking the law, but brave to ignore it, I would say.
You see, the point is right, because the next 2 or 3 or 4 generations of consumers, the sort of younger people are coming through, they tend to, they follow things on, I forget Facebook, but things like Instagram, and they are very vocal. If a company is perceived to be not behaving in a socially responsible way, they mobilise themselves.
Yeah, you can mobilise people very, very quickly through social media these days, and you've got to be astute and aware as an executive. Even if you don't do social media, you need to employ somebody who knows what's going on, and you need to manage your PR in that way. You can't.
Well, I think it's never been more important, PR, because if you traditionally it would take a while for stories to develop. With PR now, it is instant. Yes. If you get it wrong, it could have catastrophic consequences.
Well, that is true, except people haven't stopped buying from Amazon, and people haven't stopped buying at Boots, and they won't stop buying at Boots. So even if they complain about it or moan on social media, it's another thing to actually stop buying there.
Okay. Coming up, we'll talk about whether beer should be sold cheaper than the cost of water, and we'll talk about landlines. Is a landline at home still a necessity?
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Keeping an eye on the A10 at the moment. Looks like a few problems there. Could have been a collision. Looks like it's just south of the M25 at the London side, heading down towards Enfield. Not sure which direction it is, but it's the southern side of the M25. So because of that, some long queues from Enfield up to the M25. Southbound, you're queuing from just after Broxbourne down the A10 towards the M25. And the main carriageway of the motorway itself also slow both directions, approaching the exit slips for Junction 25 and the A10. Better news about that broken down bus at Hitchin Road, Stevenage. That's now been moved. All lanes open, started to ease off there, and the A1M also looking a lot better now. Just a small queue from just before Welling up towards Nebworth. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
The next travel bulletin is in 15 minutes.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Every weekday morning from 9.
Good morning, welcome to the JVS show.
Your local stories.
Have you had to rebuild your life after being a victim of crime? I think it's inhumane to keep people in prison for life. Do you think that immigration needs to stop?
Your local life.
Why do 70% of this country feel immigration is wrong?
We've actually got an open doors policy.
I am just so angry listening to some of them people.
What the government are doing, they'll start introducing American-type sentencing, like 200 years in prison.
The JVS show.
British people are not xenophobic.
Weekday mornings from 9 on BBC Three Counties Radio. The Business and Finance Hour with Roberto Perrone.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
What a lovely panel tonight. Chris Pichon, Francis Pardell and Richard Bunn. There's another question I need to ask you. I just want to dive straight into the landline thing because there's a great clip I need to play. I can't be waiting all day to play this. Is the game up for the landline? The short period of our history in which most of us expect to have a phone connected to the cable is fast fading. 15% of us live in a mobile-only household, and that number is rising. The heyday, apparently, of the traditional phone was perhaps the 1980s, by which time most people actually got a phone and no one had abandoned theirs for a mobile. We're talking about, of course, the era of Maureen Lipman's adverts for British Telecom. I've been waiting all day for it. Here she is, phoning her grandson.
Oh, congratulations on your exam results.
Grandma, I failed.
You didn't pass anything?
Pottery.
Pottery? Very useful. Anthony, people will always need plates. Anything else?
And sociology.
An ology? It gets an ology and he says he's failed. You get an ology, you're a scientist.
Whether it's well done or hard luck, a phone call says a lot.
The most brilliant boys, the teachers who were wrong, you know, they can't mark. All of them
They
can't
were great adverts. She was superb with that.
Fabulous.
A landline. Does anyone still use a landline,
Yes,
Chris?
I do.
Really?
I love landlines. I mean, I'm not anti-mobiles at all, but I like landlines. They're always clear. You don't get cut off. You know that you're going to get a signal. So I use landline for business and.
It's got cables stuck to the wall though and everything.
No, mine is hands-free. I can take it upstairs. In fact, on the way here, I was still carrying my phone into my car. So I'm going to stick with a landline. But then I'm a bit old-fashioned. I like newspapers as well. So.
Well, yeah. The thing is, in my house, if the landline rings, no one picks it up. Literally, because I know that no one will ever ring me on a landline. Everything I do is done on my phone. It's like, the big argument. The phone rings in the house. If you do ring my house, forget it. I mean, I can give the number out on radio. It wouldn't make any difference because no one will ever answer it.
Yeah, but a lot of people just use it for broadband. They don't use it
there.
Because it's there. It comes through there, and they'll use it just for broadband. It's when I think it'll phase out eventually when all these things become hands-free and technology moves on. But I don't see it's the end. But I think kids don't use it very often, do they?
No.
I mean, I used to have huge rows with my daughter over using the phone. But these days, they just give them a mobile phone.
We were talking about the 8-year-olds. Because wasn't there a time when there'd be shared lines?
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, we used to have them. It was only when they actually got an itemised bill that I realised how much she admitted she was using the phone. I mean,
the argument. They ran out the argument.
We were talking about it recently, and it's just
the phone at home. The home phone. You charge out the bills.
But I don't think. I think Francis is right. I don't think the landline will disappear for quite some time.
I think it's like that Mark Twain quote. Death has been greatly exaggerated.
Richard Bunn.
Well, I never use my home. It's either my mother-in-law or my sister-in-law if the phone rings. We know it is, so I don't answer the phone, so I know who it's going to be. Until reception is perfect, you will always need a business landline. Although we use mobiles on purpose because people are more likely to answer the phone if you ring on a mobile. But one of the things actually relevant to us is if you apply for credit, if you haven't got a telephone landline, it scores against you. Because it looks like you're a bit transient. So it's a bit like being on the electoral roll or not. If you don't have a landline, you have a negative mark against you if you're applying for finance.
That's interesting.
That's an interesting point.
So it's always worth having one, even if you don't use it.
So what are the good things you need to have? What are the positive things if you need? If I wanted to buy the latest Ford Transit and do it like B.A. Baracus' van in the 18, for example, because that'd be a sort of van I know, black with a red stripe and a toolbox in the back and a machine gun at the front, and want to apply for credit for that, I mean, what would get me to tick all the right boxes?
Best thing to be is a homeowner. Don't change your address too often. Be on the electoral roll. It's a big no-no not to be on the electoral roll. Have a telephone landline. And if you have credit cards, don't shut them down, even if you don't use them. Keep them open, because when they score your spend of your available credit. So if you've got a credit card with a £10,000 limit, cut up the card, keep the account open, and it shows that you're using 0 of your available credit. If you shut it down and you've got no credit available, you're not actually showing you're managing your finances. It sounds silly, but that's how the scoring system works.
It's a different world, isn't
We've
it?
all learned something there.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Francis, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
pardalepr.com, which is my website, and that says a lot about me and the work that I've done and my background.
Chris Pichon, the Wenter Business Group. You opening up any new centres?
No, we're still plodding away with all the existing centres. The one down in Enfield is now up and running and really beginning to do what it's there for. Now we're busy. Everything's still going on.
And the handsome young man who took over the job that you were doing so very well before you became chairman, is he coping well?
Well, two of them, we split it, and they're doing good jobs. So everything is just ticking over nicely. The start-up numbers we've had are still maintained. If somebody wants to start a business, then give us a call or look on the website wenta.co.uk, and it's WENTA. And, they'll find us. We're doing a lot of other things as well, as you know.
Okay. Richard, where can people find out more about you?
whitehotvans.com, or look out for our little 2CV van driving around and give us a wave. It's all sign written, so you can't miss it driving around the local area.
That's not what you drive, though, is it?
Certainly not. No, I do occasionally.
I do think so. He's got a very nice car. Panel, does business actually care what politicians think? Labour is continuing its charm fencing on the British business. After Ed Balls yesterday, it was Ed Miliband's turn to put forward his plans for economic growth. In a speech in a Leeds air conditioning factory, the Labour leader pledged to funnel £30 billion from Whitehall to city and county authorities, including revenues from business rates. Business groups, including local enterprise partnerships, stand to benefit. The ideas were drawn up by Lord Adonis, the former Transport Secretary, the man who dreamt up HS2, of course, who is advising Labour on how to rebuild Labour's bridges with Britain's businesses. And here is Mr Miliband speaking earlier today.
The way we solve these questions I'm talking about is with local people making local decisions with local businesses about how their area can grow, prosper and create the jobs of the future. We are far too centralised a country.
Now, he's talking about sort of diverging some of the assets across the country. Chris Bishop, does big business actually care what politicians think?
About this, I don't know. I do know that money was funneled in previously through regional development agencies, and when they got rid of those, this government put in local enterprise partnerships. Now, they're supposed to be, localised. There's about 39, 40 of them around the country. And funds and government funding is being filtered through them more and more. So this is just another political trying to, show a difference between what's currently there and what they plan to do. That I would suggest that the devil's always in the detail. It's not in the headline. It's how is that money going to actually work its way through, and what's the bureaucracy behind it, and which budgets are going to suffer to actually get that money there, because they're just shuffling the same amount, whichever way you want to do it.
Francis?
I just think it's early electioneering. It's just another policy. Will it make any difference?
But does business care? I mean, do businesses actually care what politicians think, or will they just carry on regardless?
Well, I think businesses carry on regardless because politicians just talk and don't seem to do very much. But I think that unfortunately...
I shall put that to my political panel on Thursday evening. You talk a lot, but you don't get... you don't mean much.
I think the real question is, will it make a difference? And I think throwing money at a situation doesn't seem to. Look how many billions have been thrown at the NHS, and that's in a bigger mess than when they started. So I think, as Chris said, it needs an awful lot of planning, and the devil is in the detail.
Richard, I need to be brief. I want to squeeze one more question in.
OK, it's too late for Ed Miliband to be credible, I think. I'd rather they chose to look at business rates rather than what they do with the business rates.
OK. I appreciate the short response, because I need to get this question. Is the customer always right? Now, early Saturday evening, I found myself in a shop in Leagrave in Luton. I was behind a scowling 4-foot-tall dwarf of a woman, and she presented a basket on the conveyor belt, and once you put that on, she then turned around and produced another 2 baskets and put those on as well. And then she started snarling at the young lady who was doing the tills, and gave her a right mouthful, because apparently there weren't any trolleys for her to use, and she was really in a huff. Trust me, I could go on, because this woman was an absolutely evil little... she was just the most caustic little cow I've met in a long... And I said, she finished.
Say it is, Robert.
I said to the poor shop girl, you've done really well there. Can you tell a customer that they're a pain in the bottom, Richard?
Yes, well, Henry Ford famously said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So they don't necessarily know what they actually want. So our customers a lot of the time are asking for advice, so they don't necessarily know the answer. But yeah, it's how you treat them, to be honest. They don't know the answers necessarily, as long as they think they do, and they go away smiling.
I should have taken the details of the lady, the girl who was serving, and I should have written to her boss saying she did because I would have turned round and got her frozen mackerel and smacked her around the face with it. Francis Bardell, can you tell a customer sometimes that perhaps they're a pain in the bottom?
No. Because speaking as a customer, if I'm really angry about something, I'm like a grenade without the top.
Why are you taking it out on me? The poor shop girl was just...
No, but I always say, especially if it's on the phone, I'm not angry at you, I'm just angry about the situation. But the really clever people are they're empathetic, they're sympathetic, we're terribly sorry, and this shop girl did exactly. You can't win with a customer like that.
No.
So all you can do is just let her carry on, so everybody around her think, God, what a ghastly evil witch she is.
She was.
And how
Horrible
well
little
this
woman.
girl is dealing with it, because otherwise you're just going to have a fight.
Yeah. Chris?
I agree. I think that's the best way to keep you calm, you know. And life carries on. Hope you don't see another one like that.
If I was a customer-facing servant, if I was in on a shop till somewhere, I'd be useless, because if you get a stroppy customer, I would tell them.
Actually, it's often better by being calm, just to turn around and say, well, perhaps, you know, if we can't meet your needs, it's perhaps better that there's a store around the corner that can do that. Goodbye.
Just got that wet mackerel right in. Panel, thank you. You've been lovely. I can't believe the hour's up already. Chris Pichon, Francis Pardell, Richard Bunn, thank you so much. You've been very lovely.
Thank you.